Every red carpet tells two stories. The one cameras capture, and the one only hearts can feel. For Sandra Bullock and Keanu Reeves, their story didn't begin under the bright lights, but decades earlier, in the early 1990s. Hollywood then was chasing action, spectacle, and larger-than-life heroes. In the middle of that came a movie called Speed. Sandra was young, rising, filled with energy and humor that could light up even the dullest set. Keanu, already recognized for his calm intensity, carried himself differently, quiet, reserved, but magnetic. Fate placed them side by side on that film, and something unusual happened. Instead of clashing, their opposite personalities fit together. Sandra cracked jokes between takes, pulling rare smiles from Keanu. He, in turn, listened deeply when she spoke, giving her a respect not always found in Hollywood. Years later, Sandra admitted she had a crush on him then, but what mattered more was the quiet, unshakable respect they built. Their friendship wasn't loud. It wasn't for headlines. It was steady, something that endured even as their careers took different paths. She explored comedies, dramas, and thrillers. He became an icon of action and depth. Yet whenever one spoke of the other, admiration filled their words. It was this invisible bond, built quietly over decades, that would one day be tested in front of the world. And it would be Keanu's calm, perfectly timed truth that turned a moment of humiliation into a lesson Hollywood couldn't ignore. The evening was meant to be one of celebration. The streets glowed with camera flashes, fans chanted behind barricades, and stars in elegant gowns moved along the carpet. Sandra Bullock arrived with her usual warmth, signing autographs, waving to admirers, and carrying herself with the grace that years in Hollywood had taught her. But even the brightest smile can be pierced by careless words. As Sandra approached the cluster of microphones, one reporter leaned forward. His tone carried mockery rather than curiosity. Instead of asking about her achievements, he joked about her age, hinting that Hollywood had already moved on to younger stars. The laughter that followed was light, but it cut sharper than anyone admitted. Sandra's smile stayed in place. She had learned long ago how to protect herself under the gaze of millions, to laugh off insults, to keep her poise even when her heart ached. But behind her eyes, the sting was real. Decades of work, awards, and beloved performances, and in a single sentence, she was reduced to a cruel punchline. The crowd around her responded with uncomfortable chuckles. Some ignored it, others looked away. That is often how Hollywood treats its stars. Celebrate them one moment, dismiss them the next. But not everyone turned away. Standing a few steps behind, Keanu Reeves had arrived earlier, as quietly as he always did. He rarely sought attention, never indulged in drama. Yet in that moment, he noticed everything. The tiny pause before Sandra answered another question. The slight drop in her shoulders, the way her practiced smile tried to hide hurt. The cameras may not have seen it. But Keanu did. And though he stayed silent for now, something within him had shifted. As the lights flashed and reporters pressed for more sound bites, Sandra carried on with grace. She laughed at questions, signed one more autograph, and kept her posture tall. To the cameras, she seemed untouched. But Keanu knew better. He remembered the Sandra from Speed, the one who cracked jokes between takes to ease the tension of a long day. The one who could make even the quietest corner of a film set feel alive. He also remembered her strength, how she never let Hollywood's chaos steal her warmth. That strength was on display again tonight. But strength doesn't erase pain. Around them, the crowd carried on as though nothing had happened. The insult was brushed aside, buried under the noise of the red carpet. But Keanu's silence wasn't the silence of indifference. It was the silence of someone weighing the right response, knowing that words, when spoken carefully, could carry more weight than any outburst. The truth was, their bond wasn't built on fleeting red carpet moments. It was built over years of mutual respect. Sandra admired Keanu's humility, the way he treated every crew member with kindness. And Keanu admired Sandra's resilience, her ability to remain playful and professional despite the endless scrutiny. That bond mattered now, more than ever. Sandra's eyes met his briefly across the carpet. In that unspoken glance, she understood. He had seen it. He had noticed what others ignored, and she knew Keanu well enough to realize he would not let this pass quietly. He wasn't a man who sought to dominate a room. But when he chose to speak, people listened. And as the night rolled forward, the moment for his response drew closer. The red carpet moved forward, a blur of flashing bulbs, shouted questions, and polished smiles. To most, the moment of insult had already vanished into the noise. But for Keanu Reeves, it lingered like a weight. As they approached the final section of the press line, a reporter turned his microphone toward Keanu. The question was routine, about his next role, but Keanu paused. His eyes shifted, not to the cameras, but toward Sandra, standing only a few steps away. The crowd sensed something unusual. The clicking of cameras slowed. Reporters leaned in closer, and then, in his calm, steady voice, Keanu spoke, not about his career, but about her. "Sandra Bullock," he said, his tone gentle but carrying unmistakable strength, "is one of the most extraordinary people I've ever known. She's not only an incredible actress, but one of the kindest and most genuine souls in this industry. She has this gift of making everyone around her lighter, brighter, and that deserves respect." The effect was instant. The chatter died. Photographers lowered their cameras for a moment. Even the reporter who had mocked her earlier looked stunned. Keanu hadn't raised his voice. He hadn't scolded or argued. Instead, he had chosen the higher ground, not to attack the cruelty, but to honor Sandra's worth. His words carried the authority of sincerity, the kind of truth that silences without force. Sandra froze for a moment. This wasn't the quiet glance of reassurance she expected. This was public. This was him using his voice, his reputation, and his honesty to shield her. And as the applause began to rise from the fans behind the barricades, Sandra's practiced smile softened into something real: gratitude, emotion, and relief. The atmosphere on the red carpet had changed. The insult that once echoed like a cruel joke was gone, replaced by Keanu's calm truth. Reporters who moments earlier had been hungry for headlines now scribbled down every word he spoke. Fans behind the barricades cheered, chanting Sandra's name with pride. The nurse-like whispers of cruelty, the mocking chuckles, the careless dismissal of Sandra's worth, all of it faded. In its place stood something rare in Hollywood: silence, respect, and admiration. Sandra turned slightly toward Keanu. Their eyes met once more. This time there was no mask of forced grace on her face. Instead, her expression carried warmth, gratitude, and a touch of vulnerability. She knew what he had done wasn't for publicity. It wasn't to make himself look good. He had spoken because he cared, because their friendship was real. And in that moment, the entire crowd understood it too. By the time the night ended, clips of Keanu's words were already spreading online. Within hours, fans were sharing the footage with captions like, "This is how you defend a friend," and "Keanu Reeves defines loyalty." News outlets picked up the story. Headlines the next morning didn't talk about the insult, they celebrated the response. "Reeves silences reporter with class," read one. "Sandra Bullock shines after Keanu's words," read another. Sandra herself summed it up best in a later interview. "That's just Keanu. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't play games. He simply speaks the truth. And when he does, people listen." Keanu never sought credit. To him, it had been simple. Someone he respected was hurt, and he couldn't let silence win. But for millions watching, it became a reminder that loyalty and kindness still matter, even in a world so quick to judge. The night that began with flashing cameras and cruel laughter ended with a lesson. Kindness, spoken with sincerity, can silence cruelty. Sandra Bullock was insulted, but Keanu Reeves turned that moment into something unforgettable, a story of friendship, loyalty, and respect. So now, let me ask you, who in your life would you stand up for no matter what? Take a moment to tell them. Because sometimes, one voice, One act of kindness can change everything.